Added uncertainty in Haiti this Tuesday night. With his country in chaos, the prime minister is now quitting. Who will fill the power vacuum?
We need election in order for us to get out of this situation.
No warning signs why corrections officials say there was nothing to predict Miles Sanderson's killing spree in Saskatchewan, despite his multiple convictions. Boeing's plummeting reputation.
Customers are going to pay attention as to which airplane they're booked on.
The growing list of problems plaguing the aircraft maker. And total eclipse of the sun. The New Heights and New Brunswick team is going so you can view a rare event.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. One of the poorest countries in the Caribbean is descending into an even more precarious situation tonight. Haiti, ravaged by gang violence, is now effectively a failed state. The United Nations says more than 15,000 Haitians have been displaced, more than 4,700 people have been killed, and what was already a fragile economy is now suffering a shortage of basic goods, including food and medical supplies. Now, Haiti's prime minister is resigning, something the gangs had demanded, but that leaves a dangerous power vacuum. And tonight, Kenya, which had agreed to send a security force to Haiti, has paused that plan. Mackenzie Gray has our top story tonight.
A late-night resignation after months of pressure, adding to Haiti's years of chaos. Haitian Prime Minister Ariel Henry saying he'll quit soon once a transitional council is implemented in the coming days to run the country.
The members of the Transitional Council will be appointed in the next 24 to 48 hours, and then they will take the step to appoint an interim prime minister in the near future.
Henry was never elected prime minister, but was appointed to the position by the former president 2 days before his assassination in 2021. Since then, he's missed multiple deadlines to hold Haiti's first elections since 2016. In that time, Haiti's seen widespread protests, law and order essentially falling apart, and in recent weeks, gangs have taken over the main airport, port, and most of the capital, leading to nearly 1,200 killed and 700 injured.
There has been so much bloodshed and destruction in the meantime that it's quite tragic to see what it took to get us to this point.
But today, the streets seem normal after weeks of gang fighting crippled Port-au-Prince. The shoemaker saying it's time for Haiti to find someone who can get the country back on track.
We need election in order for us to get out of the situation that we are in so we can have true leadership. So let's test it out. Let's try it. What do we have to lose?
And there's no shortage of options. The first, Jimmy Chirizari, the leader of the G9 gang in control of the capital. Nicknamed Barbecue for allegedly lighting opponents on fire, he says what's happening in Haiti isn't peaceful. We're making a bloody revolution in the country.
They like my speech.
Former Haitian police chief and Senator Guy Philippe also potentially vying for a leadership position. Philippe helped lead a coup in 2004 and recently served a 5-year sentence in a U.S. federal prison on drug charges.
We don't hate United States, we don't hate France or Canada. We're just asking them. We know we need their help.
Henry resigned from Puerto Rico last night, unable to return home after traveling to Kenya to finalize a United Nations security force. But Donna, Nairobi now potentially backing out, saying they're waiting for an indication a government is in place before they send any help.
Okay, Mackenzie Gray in Ottawa, thanks. A ship towing a barge packed with nearly 200 tons of food and supplies is finally on its way to Gaza. The charity vessel Open Arms left Cyprus this morning on what's hoped could be a new humanitarian corridor to deliver much-needed aid to Palestinians. Israel's siege on Gaza has caused more than 31,000 deaths, according to the health ministry there. And it's not just weapons killing people now, it's starvation. A warning, some of the images are disturbing. Redmond Shannon reports.
6-year-old Fadi lives with cystic fibrosis. His mother says he needs a high-calorie diet with fresh produce, but that is not available in northern Gaza. His hospital bed is a 10-minute drive from the Erez border crossing. Israel has kept that checkpoint closed since the October 7th Hamas attacks, and it has greatly limited aid routes from the south too. The United Nations says airdrops are barely scratching the surface of need. That's why this ship's departure from Cyprus could be so important.
Of course, it's a complex and historic mission. What we are doing right now
The Open Arms is normally an NGO migrant rescue vessel, but now it is towing almost 200 tons of food to Gaza. The charity World Central Kitchen is building a jetty in Gaza to help it dock later this week.
I cannot release specific locations of where that's going to happen, but for sure it's going to be in Gaza.
The cargo has been inspected by Israeli authorities. More ships are set to follow, and a US military vessel is heading from Virginia to build another dock for aid deliveries. On the shores of Gaza, there isn't much excitement at the news. This man describes the maritime corridor as nonsense. He asks, why is it needed if Israel can simply allow trucks to drive across the land border crossings?
There's only one way to restore an adequate flow of humanitarian aid. The people of Gaza need an immediate humanitarian pause.
Peace mediators are not optimistic.
We are not near a deal.
Until a deal is reached, boats like these may be the best hope for children like Fadi. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
For a second day, Israeli warplanes struck deep into Lebanon. The IDF claims 2 Hezbollah military command centers were hit. The Iran-backed militant group says at least 2 people were killed and 20 others injured. Israel's attack was a response to a barrage of rocket attacks on northern Israel overnight. Its military also released this video of strikes on 2 army sites in southern Syria, where it claims members of Hezbollah were operating. In Washington, the former special counsel assigned to report on President Joe Biden's possession of classified documents faced tough questions today. In his report, Robert Hur found no wrongdoing on Biden's part, but he did criticize Biden's ability to remember key events. As Jackson Proskow reports, that's led to allegations of a politically motivated hit job.
Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that
under oath and under fire
the president willfully retained classified materials?
Special counsel Robert Hur faced bipartisan backlash for his investigation into President Joe Biden and his decision not to recommend criminal charges for mishandling of classified documents.
Joe Biden broke the law, but because he's a forgetful old man who would appear sympathetic to a jury, Mr. Hur chose not to bring charges.
Hur already faced deep criticism from Democrats for claiming Biden had a poor memory by alleging the president could not remember key dates, including the date of his son's death.
How in the hell dare he raise that?
My assessment in the report about the relevance of the president's memory was necessary and accurate and fair.
But a newly released transcript of Hur's full interview with Biden shows the president did, in fact, remember the day and month of Beau Biden's death, May 30th, correctly. More fuel for the fiery hearing.
You don't gratuitously add language that you know will be useful in a political campaign. You were not born yesterday. You understood exactly what you were doing.
Partisan politics had no place whatsoever in my work.
At the same time, Republicans seized on what they claim is a double standard, as former President Donald Trump faces multiple criminal charges for his willful retention of classified documents.
Donald Trump's being prosecuted for exactly the same act that you've documented that Joe Biden committed.
There are, in fact, key differences. Biden cooperated and returned documents when asked. Trump allegedly did not.
I never knew anything about that.
And in an exclusive interview with CNN, a former Trump employee says he helped load boxes of documents onto a plane, just as Trump was meeting with the Justice Department.
They were the boxes that were in the indictment, the white banker's boxes. That's what I remember loading.
Republicans had hoped to use this hearing to advance their case against President Biden. Instead, they opened the door to a lengthy discussion about Donald Trump's possession of classified documents, something he still faces trial for. Donna?
All right, Jackson in Washington, thanks. Boeing's reputation, which had already taken a hit after multiple incidents, is being further shaken after a frightening flight from Australia to New Zealand. The pilot says he temporarily lost control of the Boeing 787. Passengers say the plane suddenly dropped mid-flight, throwing people around the cabin. Dozens of people were injured. The flight did land safely, but it's again raised concern about safety and quality control at Boeing. Air Canada and WestJet each have over 100 of the American-made planes in their fleets. And Gaviola looks at the problems piling up at Boeing.
Terrifying, traumatic, The pilot of this Boeing Dreamliner says he temporarily lost control of the aircraft. It happened about 2 hours into the flight from Sydney to Auckland and is under investigation.
Then I looked up to see the gentleman that was sitting next to me on the roof of the plane. I'm looking at him fully outstretched with his back on the roof of the plane. And then he came crashing down to the floor. It was insane.
Boeing again in the headlines this week as the New York Times reports the aerospace giant's production process has failed 33 of 89 audits conducted during a probe by the U.S. Federal Aviation Authority. Over the weekend, whistleblower John Barnett, a longtime Boeing employee who retired in 2017, died by suicide. Last week, he was in depositions related to a lawsuit against his former employer. His family says he tried to highlight serious concerns, but was met with a culture of concealment that valued profits over safety. Boeing tells Global News, "We are saddened by Mr. Barnett's passing, and our thoughts are with his family and friends." Aviation advisor Robert Hur says Boeing's troubles date back to 2019, when its 737 MAX planes were grounded worldwide. That came after 2 deadly crashes involving its aircraft, killing 346 people.
I wouldn't call it a deep rot, but there's certainly something systemically or fundamentally wrong with the safety culture and attention that Boeing gives to its services.
He says it's an urgent wake-up call to American authorities to ensure Boeing's safety issues are fixed. Business professor Richard Powers says without sweeping changes at U.S.-based Boeing, its biggest rival, Europe-based Airbus, will likely widen its lead in the industry.
Remember, the reputation damage, and it's not only with Boeing, but it's the airline as well. So does Air Canada want to put a huge order in for Boeing when there's concerns about, the quality and the safety record that the airline has? Probably not.
There are also multiple reports the U.S. Department of Justice has opened a criminal investigation into the Boeing jetliner incident in January, where a door plug blew off an Alaska Airlines flight. Boeing pointed Global News to a statement from the CEO saying increased scrutiny will make the company better. Some analysts say history suggests otherwise. Donna?
And Gaviola, thanks. A government review has found there were no indicators to predict Miles Sanderson's deadly rampage in Saskatchewan in September of 2022. He'd been released from prison after serving 2/3 of a 4-year sentence. The 32-year-old killed 11 people and injured 17 others on James Smith Cree Nation and in the village of Weldon. The probe into his release found Correctional Service and Parole Board officials acted reasonably and appropriately. It did find failures in how Sanderson's mental health was managed in prison and in the assessment of his violent history. It says there was significant information that Sanderson was at risk for both general acts of violence and acts of domestic violence, particularly if he was misusing substances. The review makes 14 recommendations, including more time and resources for parole board members dealing with these types of cases, and new policies and training for correctional service staff assessing mental health and domestic violence risks. Sanderson died of a cocaine overdose shortly after his arrest. Protecting people doing dangerous work. Coming up, the Canadian connection to an innovation helping Ukrainians find landmines on their land. Russia claims it has thwarted an armed incursion by Ukraine and by pro-Ukraine fighters from Russia. It says anti-Kremlin armed groups attempted a cross-border raid from 3 separate directions using tanks and armored combat vehicles. Russia claims it repelled those attacks. Ukraine says the groups were acting independently. Hours earlier, Ukraine launched one of its largest drone attacks since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion. Critical Russian infrastructure was hit with dozens of long-range drones and rockets. At least 2 major oil refineries were hit deep inside Russia. And after months of warning there was no money left, the U.S. has announced a new stopgap aid package for Ukraine worth $300 million. It includes artillery rounds and air defense interceptors. The White House says the funding came from unanticipated savings in weapons contracts, though it will only temporarily hold the line against Russia and does not replace the critical need for Congress to pass a $60 billion aid package. Canada says it will provide $3 billion in financial aid and military support to Ukraine this year. That includes millions for demining efforts. 30% of Ukraine's land is estimated to be contaminated with mines. And with spring around the corner, clearing that land is a priority. Crystal Gamansing reports from Ukraine on an innovative way to protect those deminers.
So this is called a PMN2. It's a Soviet-era anti-personnel blast mine that will kill a child. It will take a leg off an adult.
The explosive would be in this part?
High explosive in there.
For the past 10 years, Michael Newton has been working with the Halo Trust clearing landmines around the world. Currently, his focus is on Ukraine.
It's different in the sense of the scale. It's like nothing we've ever seen before.
Canada has committed $4 million to the Halo Trust to train female deminers. With conscription and martial law, women make up a large portion of those available for the job. Clearing the land is a priority for Ukraine, especially agricultural land. Like many things related to Ukraine's defense, innovation is key. The founder of Ukraine Springs Company had a relative injured by a landmine, which put him on a quest to create something to protect military deminers, also called sappers. Global News visited the facility where Igor Yefimenko makes protective shoes in late February. Some of the parts are 3D printed, others purchased.
I have a snowboard at home, and this is scraps for snowboard.
Easily acquired snowboard bindings combined with a Canadian spider boot design he found online. The raised shoe avoids direct pressure on a mine's detonator and reduces exposure to the blast. The shoes have been tested using different types of mines, including the PMN2s, and Ukraine's Emergency State Services has signed off on them. This is the sapper shoe that was used in that test video, and you can see it is still pretty much intact, is still functional, and the test dummy still has its leg.
Still really want to help everybody. It's very emotional when someone send you a message in Twitter or Viber, in Facebook. They told me, thank you for saving my leg. It's very emotional for me.
Locally produced protective gear is a step in helping those clear the land, but there is still a long and active front line. And Newton says the true extent of Ukraine's mine problem won't be known until the war ends. Crystal Gamansing, Global News, London.
Hockey hangout ahead. Seline Dion makes a surprise appearance at an Edmonton Oilers game. Singer-songwriter Eric Carmen, who had huge hits in the 1970s and 80s, has died. Carmen's wife made the announcement on his website saying, "Our sweet, loving and talented Eric passed away in his sleep over the weekend. He was 74 years old." He rose to fame with the pop group The Raspberries before becoming a solo artist. He wrote hits like Hungry Eyes from Dirty Dancing and All by Myself, which later became one of Celine Dion's biggest hits. Celine Dion has mostly remained out of the public eye over the last year since her diagnosis with a rare neurological disorder. But the Canadian superstar recently turned up at a hockey game.
Exciting to meet those big guys, just like on flat shoes. I can just cannot imagine like on skates with all the equipment and like going like.
There she is, cracking people up in the locker room. This video posted over the weekend by the Edmonton Oilers. She joked with players in this surprise locker room visit in Las Vegas last month. The 55-year-old singer has what's known as stiff person syndrome, an incurable disorder that causes progressive muscle rigidity and spasms. She also made an appearance at the Grammy Awards in February. Next, the New Brunswick scientists giving us all a front row seat for next month's total solar eclipse. There's a rare chance coming up to see a total solar eclipse. It takes place on April 8th. It happens when the moon passes between the Earth and Sun while completely blocking the face of the Sun. Bad weather, though, can ruin the occasion. So as Heidi Petracek explains, a retired scientist from New Brunswick is helping enthusiasts get a clear view.
When the moon aligns itself between the Earth and the Sun April 8th, Canadians in the right places at the right times will have the chance to see a rare total solar eclipse.
The total phase of the eclipse comes closer to more
citizens' actual places where they live than I think any eclipse in history.
I've been working on the IMU calibration.
Enter retired medical physicist David Hunter of Florenceville, New Brunswick, determined to help as many people as possible witness the event after his last attempt as a child back in 1970 on a trip to Nova Scotia ended in disappointment.
And I got there, my parents took me there, and it was cloudy.
So decades later, he and a team of local scientists have created their way to see the eclipse above the clouds.
There we go.
A tower equipped with 8 rotating cameras lifted by a huge helium balloon will capture and transmit images live from 30 kilometers above the Earth.
We can get a good panoramic view of the planet and the Earth during the eclipse, and especially perhaps see the shadow of the moon approaching us.
In Canada, the eclipse's path of totality hits southern Ontario first over communities such as Hamilton and Fort Erie, then continues to southern Quebec. After that, it's western and central New Brunswick's turn, followed by PEI and Newfoundland. Communities all along the path making the most of it.
Front row seats to the total solar eclipse. You need to be in western New Brunswick.
The last time a total solar eclipse happened in those parts was more than 1,000 years ago. So the region is ready with 30,000 pairs of eclipse glasses, community viewing locations, and a special event with retired astronaut Chris Hadfield.
It's such a unique opportunity to do something, and never going to happen in our lifetimes again.
The members of Hunter's team now among the many Canadians getting ready for the show. Their balloon set to beam it live around the world. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Halifax.
Love that. That is Global National for this Tuesday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is Rec House, Newfoundland and Labrador. We'd love to see Your Canada. Please email it to viewers@globalnational.com. And thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.